Howdy everyone, what's going on? Today we're going to be reviewing the Resident Evil 2 remake. And before we actually get into it, I want to set the tone for this review by saying, this game is really good. I really enjoyed it. But a lot of people have been saying this is one of their top 5 games of the year, and I definitely wouldn't put it on that list. And I'll explain why that is in just a little bit. As I was saying before, I'm not really trying to cheapen what this game did. I think it's a fantastic game, and is it one of the best games to come out this year? Absolutely. But I also think it's important to note that this came out in 1998. They did a fantastic job with the remake, I don't know if they could have done much better. But the way people were talking about this game, I was expecting it to be the best Resident Evil game ever, pretty much. And in that regard, I think it disappointed me. Personally, I wouldn't rank it higher than Resident Evil 7. I think RE7 is pretty much the pinnacle of the Resident Evil series right now. But again, that's the thing. It's Resident Evil 2. And do I like Resident Evil 2? Yeah. Did I like the remake? Absolutely. Matter of fact, there's so little complaints I have about this remake, it's almost unbelievable. If you've played this game before, then this is going to be a fantastic experience. And no, I don't mean this one, I mean pre-remake 98, Resident Evil 2. This game is an amazing modern take on that game with some fantastic additional content. The graphics in this game are absolutely fantastic. And while they may not be on a level of, say, Shadow of the Tomb Raider or Hitman 2, they're still certainly up there, and I would hold them in a very high regard when talking about graphics in games. What amazes me is that they so faithfully recreated every environment from this game with a more modern third-person camera so that you actually really have time to look around and appreciate what they've done. Everything in this game looks fantastic. And the gameplay changes are a very stark difference even from something like Resident Evil 6. This has a much more fluid, much better third-person camera, and I hope they use this going forward in all of the Resident Evil remakes. I think everybody's pretty much in agreement that they're doing an extremely good job modernizing the control scheme for Resident Evil remakes now. The first couple of HD remakes were pretty much the exact same game. Now we're actually getting something very different, and it's understandable why people are so impressed. And you know what, I always complain about it when it's a problem, so I feel like I should give Resident Evil some props for this because they did an extremely good job with the PC port. The optimization and the controls in general in this game are fantastic. Now, each campaign is going to take you about 6 to 10 hours on average, but it's going to be different depending on how you play the game. Not to mention the fact that there are technically 4 different campaigns to complete. They're all pretty much the same thing, but they all count as 4 separate campaigns. And on top of that, there's also a series of side missions to complete. And at this point, you may be thinking, well, that sounds perfect. Slap a 10 out of 10 on there, give it Game of the Year, and we're good to go. Well, not quite. This game is fantastic, and I would absolutely recommend it to anyone that's thinking of getting it. But there are a lot of problems I have with this game that I haven't quite heard other people address. And personally, I don't even think it's the best Resident Evil game out there. And again, with enough people putting this on their Game of the Year list, I was expecting the best Resident Evil game out there. It's a good remake, but it's certainly not without its flaws. At the end of the day, it is a fairly faithful remake of Resident Evil 2, which means there is a lot of backtracking to do. But a lot of complaints I have in that regard are more nitpicks than anything. And again, it's not to say that they didn't modernize this game properly. I love difficult games, and they did a fantastic job of making this game difficult. It's just, inherently being a game from 98, it's gonna have 98 game problems. Again, more of a nitpick than anything. There are, however, 2 real problems I do have with the game. One of the real problems I have with this game comes in the form of monetization. I generally always dislike monetization in games unless the developer is really broke, or it's a really huge piece of content you're gonna be getting. And none of the DLC really fits that description in this game. There's about $30 Canadian worth of DLC in this game, and pretty much all of it is cosmetic. Which, listen guys, I'm always gonna make fun of a developer for thinking skins for your character should be worth $4 Canadian. I got the game for $25 Canadian on the Steam sale. The DLC would cost me more than the game. That's ridiculous. because at this point, they're implying that their downloadable content is worth more than the whole game itself, which it's not. It isn't. But as for most of the skins, I could probably tell you why people buy them. Although, I have a completely different opinion about paying for mod support in a game. That's another conversation for another time. I feel like I should mention the only two skins I actually care about that they added are free. And those are the original skins for Claire and Leon from Resident Evil 98. Which, it's a really fun experience to play through with that. It's always hilarious to watch. And while it's a nice little extra, I feel like they could have done more. Take the music from Resident Evil 98. They ported the character models over for free with no problem. As for the music though, if you want the original game soundtrack from Resident Evil 2, well then they're gonna charge you separately for it. And don't worry everybody, I know you're probably getting kind of sick of hearing about this at this point, but I saved the best for last. They sell all of the rewards you get for beating this game on the highest difficulty, which I never agree with, but I might understand in a multiplayer game, I might understand something where you want an edge over somebody. This is a 100% single player game. There is no purpose of buying this fucking game if you're going to buy that progress booster. You are going to greatly diminish the amount of content you get in there for yourself. For that reason alone, I'm more inclined to say Resident Evil 2 was more of a casually oriented remake, and that's not really who I make videos for. Generally, I play games to get enjoyment out of them, and the longer I want to play that game, that's usually a good thing. Also, completely unrelated to my review, but the excuse "it's a meme" isn't really a thing. That's like the new "it's a prank, bro." It's a meme, bro. What the fuck? At the end of the day, though, all of those are just complaints. I can't say there isn't a lot of content included in the game already, and I can't say it isn't well done. Actually, another thing that really surprised me while I was playing was the in-game audio, because it's fantastic. It's probably some of the best in-game audio I've ever heard. My second real complaint, and the real reason I can't rate it higher than Resident Evil 7, don't get mad about this one's just a personal thing. And even though I gave that game an 8, that was more because that game excels as a horror game more than any other Resident Evil game. But even in comparison to games like The Witcher 3 and Red Dead Redemption 2, I can't rate Resident Evil much higher than an 8. And a 7.5 on my rating scale is actually really good. I only save 8 and above for like, wow, this is fantastic, I can't believe this game exists. Which I really don't give out very often. But again, that's just my personal opinion. Don't let anything I say take away from this game, because like I said, I highly recommend it and it's fantastic. I just didn't enjoy it as much as Resident Evil 7. And you guys are probably sick of hearing about that game at this point, but it's a really good game. And if you're looking for a horror game, it's certainly one of the best horror games I've ever played. This is more of a zombie game, and I'm glad the Resident Evil formula moved away from this.